and y'all can hear welcome to OB Studios. So you can see that on my screen I do have this shiny button over here, and with this I created it using Breakdance and MotionPage. You can use any other builder that you want, but if you're on Breakdance, you can follow the tutorial to create it also on your own, or you can just watch it to learn one or two things. So the whole idea is we need this shiny thing is more like a div that is rotating around. So it just rotates around and it creates this feel like you do have like a shiny button, and there is just this hover, and then you do have like a shadow on it. So it is not really complicated, but if you're able to put one or two together, you'll be able to also create it. So let's see how you are going to do that. So here is here's my Breakdance environment. What I'm going to do is to add a div. So I'm just going to leave this div over here, and inside the div I am going to add a button. All right, so in the button we are going to give this a name as Breakdance and Motion Page. You can do something like this. We can use whatever that we want, but we are just going to use this. And let's go into custom in the styling, and let's click on custom, and let's style it a bit in the way that we do want. All right, I'm going to go into size, and for size, this one will be for the pattern. So the top 20, the bottom also 20, and that should be good. The left and right, I'm gonna leave it like that. And one thing that I can also do when it comes to using Breakdance is you can give the width of the button what you want. So let's give this one like 2. If this too small, let's see, 300. All right, so 300 does work, and that should be fine. All right, I can save this, and let's click back on the navigator, and over here we see we have the button, and then we do have the div that sets in the button. You understand why we are placing the button inside the div when the time comes. So inside this div, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into background. I want to see like what is happening, so I'm going to give it a background of that. Then I'm going to go into container. Over here, I'm going to give the div a height. Let's give it something like 64. Okay, so that is 64. Let's say 66. All right, that is good. And on the left hand side, remember that this button I think is 300. So let's try 300. 306, 306. All right, that is fine. So what I'm going to do is, when you can see that this div is still selected, I am going to go into layout, and then in layout I'm going to make sure the alignment is centered like that. Then this also centered like that. So we do have this that has like the div is a bit bigger than the button, and then we do have the button inside, and that is good. Okay, the next thing that I'm going to do is click back on the button, go into custom. Over here I want to change the radius to 30 pixels. You'll see, so that is 30 pixels. And I'm going to click on the div 2 and come into the container side, and over here I'm going to go into border, and for border I want to change this one to also 30 pixels. So we do have this line right there, and that is good. The next thing that we would want to do is let's try and add a bit of color here. So background, and give it like a charcoal feel. Right, I'm going to copy this, and then I'm going to click on my, as you can see, my section, my main section. This for cosmetics, you don't really have to do this. So I'm just putting the color over there. And the next thing that I want to do is, let's save this again. Let's click back on our div, and inside that div, what I want to do is click on add, and I want to add another div inside. So click on add another div. You can see it takes like all the height. But what we want to do is, since our div is selected, we can go into container, and then with this, the height, we don't what we want to do. So the height from, if this div is in the middle of this, we can give it a width. Let's say a width of let's say 4 pixels, right? maybe 4 pixels too small. Let's give it a width of 20 pixels. Okay, 20 pixels is good. All right, and the height, we're going to say that we want the height to be a bit longer. So what we can do is let's go the height of 300 pixel. That is good. Maybe 300 is too big. Let's say 200 pixel. We'll find out how good this is when we get to animating it. So this is it. So this div, what we can do is we can call it, let's give it a name so that we can know rotator. That is good. And we can call this one button BG. All right, and then that's button, and that is fine. Okay, what next are we going to do? Our rotator div is selected. We are going to come into search and type in position, and then click on this cog icon. All right, over here you can see that there are different positions. There's one for the hover, and then there's one for the normal. You want to use this one if you're using Breakdance. So make sure it's just not the hover position, but the normal position. All right, so over here I'm just going to change this one to absolute, and this is what happens. So let's save that. Let's go back into our button BG div and then type in, we're going to type in overflow. Want to make sure that the overflow is hidden. So click on that and then click on hidden, and that is fine. So that is pretty good. What we are going to do next is clicking back on our rotator. We're going to go into background. I'm going to make sure that I'm using gradient so that it looks and feel better. So I'm going to put let's make this one, we can even use 90. Not all right, so 90. And so this is more like cosmetic, so you don't really have to worry about it. So I'm going to make this one empty, and for the red I'm going to make it white. All right, and that is good. If anything change, we can come back and change it if we feel like we need to change something over there. All right, so that being done, we're going to click back on our button, and then we're going to click also, we're going to type in index. We want to make the button come on top of the rotator div. So I'm going to make sure that index is, let's say 3. So that is absolutely fine. Let's save that. Is that all that we need to do? All right. Okay, so I think this should work for the beginning. Let's go back into the background BG div, and for this, I'm going to click back on the button, right, and then go here. I want to copy the color here, and then click on the div that's set in here. Change this one to that, and I'm just gonna click back over here. Make sure the color is a bit faint. All right, and that should be good. Okay, so when we preview this in the front, so this is what we do have. You can see that we do have this over here, and that is fine. So the next thing that we are going to do is we're going to try and animate the rotator div so that it will look like there's a shiny type of thing happening. So let's get into MotionPage and try and do that. So over here I have MotionPage selected. I'm just going to create a new timeline, and then for this timeline let's call it a shiny button. Sure. All right, I'm going to refresh this. All right, let's create a new timeline, and we're going to choose the page that we are using called shiny button, and let's give it a name that we want. We're going to name it shiny button as a timeline. So that is a timeline created. So what do we want to do? We want, when the page loads, we want this whole rotator div, we want it to just keep rotating, and when it rotates, it will give a feel like we do have a shiny button. So that is what the idea is. We didn't give them any class, but it will be really good to give it a class so that you'll be able to know what you are picking. So let's try and give it a class. Over here we're going to go into advanced and then give this one a class of let's say button. BG. And that is good. Let's create that. And the next thing is the button itself. Also go here and then just call it button name. And then this one, the rotator, we can call it button RT, right? That should be good. And then let's save that. So we're giving them a class. Everyone has a class now, so that is pretty good. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is we are going to start animating. So back in MotionPage, I'm going to select that rotator. So rotator is called button RT, right? And that's fine. So we have selected the rotator. It is going to rotate itself for a while continuously. So what we want to do is consider it is bleeding at the bottom. We want this one to go all the way up into the middle. So rotator is selected. I am going to go into translate, and over here I'm going to make sure that this is 50%. All right, I'm going to do it negative, and you can see that it is at the top. So the next thing that we want to do after this is just try and spin it. But what you really want to also do now is to click on the 2, because you do not want this one to rotate and go into its normal state. And let me show you what happens if I don't change the 2 to. So if I over here, if I click on play, you can see that it goes back to the bottom. We don't want that to happen. So I'm going to go into the 2 and then go on rotate. And over here, on the rotate per se, translate. And then for translate, I'm going to paste this one also here. So even when we play this, it's not going to go to the bottom. It's going to stick where it is. So now, what do we want to do next is to just keep rotating this and just keep rotating it. All right, so let's go to the rotate. We are at the 2. So over here, we just want to rotate it 360 degrees, right? And then let's go back and then just play it. All right, you can see that it is pretty fast. We are going to extend the timeline to like 5 seconds. All right, so you can see that it is not like doing what we really want it to do. So let's rotate it clockwise. Let's go back. So it is going like that. All right, that is fine. We are going to fix that. So how do we make sure that this this thing goes from here, it rounds around here, it goes around here, and then comes back over here? So what I am going to do, what I'm going to show you is, let's go to the from, right? And then we are going to change the origin position. This thing is in the middle over here. It's around this spot, right? And for us to be able to make sure that when it is rotating, it is not rotating the middle of the div, but it is rotating the bottom of it. So the bottom will be around here. If let's say we want to rotate this whole, then it will rotate from the axis of the middle, but we want it to rotate from the bottom over here. And that's the same thing that we want this div to do. So when it goes to the origin, we want to make sure that we push this one over here to 50, and that is fine. And then we're going to go to the 2, and then over here we're going to go back into the origin and then push this one to also like that. Make sure that this is 50 and 100, and that should be fine. Let's go back and then play it. All right, so you can see that at the moment it is working. It is working as we want, but I think we did a mistake by putting in this negative. So we're going to remove the negative, and then we're going to play it again. So now it goes like that. All right, so you can see that it doesn't like necessarily, it is not flowing fluidly. So for us to fix that from in the from, we are going to change the ease from default to none. And then in the 2, we're going to change the ease from default to 9. All right, so let's go back, and that should be, that should work a bit, make it a bit smoother. All right, it's not too bad. It's fine. So the next thing that we are going to also do is to make sure that it keeps rotating forever. So it should be on repeat. So in the 2, we are going to go on repeat. So we click on repeat, and then if you want it to repeat itself forever, we are going to make sure that this is -1. And then let's save it. Let's go back, and then we can just click on play. All right, so that is like one way of creating this shiny button. Then, like, if you want to create something like that, there are so many other ways. I tried other ways. That some other ways are a bit difficult than this. So depending on how accurate or how sophisticated you want this to be, you can try some other ways to also accomplish this. But this is one way of creating it using MotionPage and Breakdance. As I said, the idea behind it is similar across builders. If you're using a different builder, you just have to assemble it as I did assemble it over here, and you should be able to animate it when it comes to Breakdance. So this is how. Let's go back and let's save this. Right there, saved. Let's try and so this is how it works, and it's really good. We don't have the whole gradient, and we don't have like the zoom on it, but you can create the zoom. It's pretty simple to do. But yep, this is how you create the animation or the shiny button. My name is Nyako. This will be Studios. Hope you enjoyed.